So thanks everyone. Thanks for having me on this discussion panel. So I'm joined by a guest speaker with me today, and I have Karthik Sivaramakrishnan along with me. So give me a second. Let me pull out Karthik's profile. So Karthik is a graduate of 2006. He has an undergraduate Btec degree in Metallurgical and Material Science from the Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, and he has a PhD in Material Science from Arizona State University. He started his career as a process engineer at Intel in Portland, Oregon. Thereafter, he was a product manager at Lam Research for their deposition team, and currently he is a semiconductor SIMS product manager at Kamaka. It's a company in Paris, France. So that's where Karthik is from. And again, since he has done his PhD, I think he can add a lot of value. And he's also right now based in Europe. He can add a lot of value in terms of working in Europe, studying in US and so on. So that's where he's coming from. In terms of where I come from, I work as a HR director based in a company called CDK Global. And I'm based out of San Francisco, the Bay Area. And prior to this, I was the global recruiting manager for Cisco. And I used to take care of university recruiting across the world. So that's my role. And I've been in the industry for close to 10 years. And I have a master's degree. I have an undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering, a master's from IIT Bombay. And I also studied, I went for a PhD in Cornell University, but I left with a master's. Then I came back for an MBA at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So that's my profile. So hopefully I can also shed some light in terms of applying for master's programs, PhD programs, and so on. So that's the intent. The idea today is that we have a bunch of questions which have been sent to us in advance by the students. So we'll try to answer many of those questions. But I think the moderators in today's conversation can also let us know how you want to proceed. Do you want to jump straight into questions, or we could also make it interactive. You could send us questions over chat or on YouTube, and we'll try to answer them. So over to you, moderators, in terms of how you want to conduct today's session.
Anything is fine, as per your wish. Yeah.
So,
If it's as per our wish, maybe we make it interactive. Since we have a sizable audience, I think some of the questions that are in the pre-prepared list are likely to also show up as part of the Q&A, on the live discussion. And if in the end people on the call run out of questions, we can always go back and answer the questions provided beforehand. I think that would keep it more interactive for everyone. How does that sound?
Absolutely, SK. That sounds like a good plan.
Okay, great. So who's going first?
Hello, if you can go ahead and ask your questions.
Hello, am I audible to everyone?
Yes, Mahip.
Yeah, very good evening, sir.
Yes.
Sir, actually, my question is that right now I am in the IIT Rourkela. I'm pursuing my master degree, MTech in Metallurgical and Materials Engineering. I completed my bachelor degree from Bharati Vidyapeeth Deemed University College of Engineering, Pune, and my CGPA is right now 9.42. And I want to go for PhD from like Europe, in Norway and Germany. So this is I'm looking for. So what should I do for that?
SK, do you want to take a shot, or shall I jump in?
Sure. I'll start, and then if you can always chime in when you feel like it. So, I don't have any direct experience with applying to Norway or Germany. I did my PhD in USA, and I've been working in Europe. So I don't want to, pretend to have any specific knowledge on applications to Norway and Germany. However, part of the due diligence to be done is to just see what is maybe the expectation from the universities of interest, because Norway and Germany are small countries. So it's not like when you apply to the US and there's 250 universities to choose from. Maybe you first identify your 3 or 5 universities that you're really interested in, and maybe even more specifically, the professors you would want to work with. And then identify the sort of I mean, if you're applying for a PhD, there's sort of a general, let's call it a general thought process that you might want to follow. So I don't know why, but why did you choose Norway or Germany as opposed to some other European country or even the US? I'm assuming you have some specific reasons, and if they are, for example, tied to certain professors who are doing a certain type of work, then you want to find out what their funding situation is. One way to do this is often to talk to students who work in the group. So if you go onto the professor's website, you can probably find the names of the students or the other PhD students, postdoc candidates, master students working with a particular professor. You can try to reach out to them. They are always good sources of information. You want to find out the funding situation with your particular faculty, and this is of interest because then if you can appeal, the best strategy is always to appeal to a specific faculty for a specific, let's call it a specific research interest. When you apply generically to a university, you would need to back yourself with a very strong profile, because then it's up to the university to then bin you into a scholarship or a teaching assistance or some kind of funding support. Whereas usually, if you're able to line up a specific faculty before you move in, actually it's the faculty that will speak on your behalf during the selection, meaning the faculty will go to the committee, the selection committee for the particular year and say, hey, I have a student in India who's very much interested in my group, and therefore I would like to bring him on. So then it's actually the faculty that's trying to, let's say, negotiate with the university for something. So your odds are better. So this is why you're always better off for a PhD, you're always better off if you have a specific interest and therefore a specific faculty. And that's where the bulk of your time has to be spent, is to understand where you're trying to go. On the other hand, if you have a very strong profile, then you can go the approach of, oh, I would like to show up at the university and then make my choice. So in which case you can just apply to the university directly.
Okay, thank you so much, sir.
So, SK, I'll just add just a note to what you said. It's very important for students to look at it from a two-sided perspective. So why are you choosing to work with this university or professor? And why should this professor choose to work with you? So it's a two-sided problem. One is that you have a lot of options. You can apply to many, many universities, and universities know it. And likewise, the professor also has multiple students applying for roles to work with him or her. So the professor also needs to make a choice in terms of, why should I select this student? So the way you can make this match work is that a PhD is all about research. So prove that you have experience to research, you have done some research in terms of maybe internships in your past, in terms of publications in the past. Even if not publications, at least exposure is very important. So the more you can hit the ground running when it comes to research, you're going to stand out. So when you write your statement of purpose, when you apply, you need to make sure that you are a solid candidate in terms of you've done your homework, you know what that university is up to, you know what this professor is up to, you know the funding situation with this professor, you know what sort of research they're doing, and you've talked to people maybe in the graduate lab. And then if you find a match, then that's great. The second aspect is that when the professor looks at your application, they're going to use filters like, have you done enough undergraduate research work? Have you done your coursework? What is your GPA? So these are all indicators that you stand out from the application pool, and that you don't need too much training to build yourself from scratch when you enter the PhD program. So that's what the professor looks for. So as long as there's a good match between what you bring to the table and also what the professor wants to do, definitely you'll be a good candidate for getting into a PhD program. I think this is constant, whether it's Europe or US. End of the day, professors want to work with people who can add value, who can take their research agenda forward. So the more you can read up about each professor in advance, go through their website, do an in-depth analysis of what they've done and how you can add value to research and take things forward. I think that's really where the sweet spot is in terms of getting into a PhD program.
Thank you so much, sir, for valuable answer, sir.
Hi, good evening. Am I audible?
Yes, Paddy, you're audible.
Yeah, thank you. Currently, I am a master student at IIT Madras. First, I have three questions. I'll ask one by one. First thing is, what are the research areas which are having a future in coming 20 to 30 years when it is coming to the mechanical engineering? Like, what are the areas which are going, which we can find a interesting career?
So, Padi, are you talking from MS point of view or a PhD point of view?
It's PhD. I am talking about PhD.
SK, do you want to take a shot? I think you are an expert in these spaces, probably even better than me.
Yeah, but I'm not a mechanical engineer, so outright I'll say that I'm not. Also, these engineering disciplines are a bit broad, to be honest. The way I think about it, for example, I did a metallurgical and materials engineering bachelor's at IIT Madras, but my PhD work was on zinc oxide thin films, which are used as transparent electrodes in photovoltaics. What I'm trying to say is it has nothing to do with anything I learned in my undergrad, and I was not out of my depths in trying to do the work. So don't get too hung up on the disciplines that you have in your undergraduate or master's program. Those are basically intended to develop your generic problem solving skill set as well as your particular knowledge in a specific discipline, for example, mechanical engineering. But as a mechanical engineer, studying trusses and beams is, for example, a very different problem than trying to look at fluid dynamics, for example, or thermodynamics. These are all not necessarily, or if you're looking at materials properties, they all can broadly fall under the umbrella of mechanical engineering. But when you go for a PhD, I think it's time to start thinking more specific than that. Because I could give a generic response and say, for the next 20 to 30 years, the most exciting fields would be, autonomous vehicles, IoT, this kind of stuff. But how you can contribute to that is a much, much, much narrower problem, right? So, I think you have to ask yourself the question of, what are the exciting fields for the next 20 to 30 years, but how maybe your interests can fit into those broad umbrellas. Because when I say Internet of Things, it's such a catch-all phrase. It it conveys everything and nothing at the same time. So, what is your interest in, and I use Internet of Things as an example, or if I said autonomous vehicles, how are you going to contribute to autonomous vehicles, right? You can contribute as an electrical engineer, as a software engineer, as a mechanical engineer, as a materials engineer. You can contribute as practically any engineer to the improvement of technology associated with autonomous vehicles. But what is your what's your interest in what you'd want to contribute? I think otherwise the catch-all fields can be listed out. We could say data analytics, IoT, autonomous vehicles, to name a few. These are, of course, there's also a lot of emergence in gene-based therapies and all of these. These are big umbrella ideas, but how someone specifically contributes, for me, that's the question. And I think that's the question you would have to ask yourself as a master's student is, under the big umbrella ideas, what is of interest to you?
Thank you. And one more, like you have already gone education in IIT Madras, like IITs in India. At the same time, you are already know what is in abroad, like US and Canada. So as far as PhD concerned, like research work, so how you can differentiate these two? Doing a PhD in IITs or they're doing the PhDs in US or Canada or other foreign countries. As far as stipend concerned, it is less in India, except that one remaining.
Yeah, so the PhD, I think whether you do it in India or in US or Germany or Norway, I think the stipend is the least of the concerns, because your earning potential is not what you make during your PhD. It's everything that comes after. So it's secondary to the whole analysis, in my view. You need some funding to be able to, make it through and feed yourself and stay in some place while you do your PhD. But the stipend, as long as it can cover that, is okay. The question is more, from what I know, the thing about doing the PhD in India is the IITs, they have evolved as institutions of research, but the amount of active funding, let's say, is still lower than in Europe and certainly in US. So depending on what kind of research you're doing for your PhD, there might be some value in going to one place or the other. For example, if you're doing more theoretical or less capital intensive research, you could, if there's facilities in your particular institution, whether it's IIT Madras or IIT Bombay or wherever, you will be able to get by. Whereas if it's stuff which, uses a lot of different heavy, expensive equipment like TEMs and SCMs for characterization and that kind of stuff, you probably have more access to those kinds of facilities abroad. For example, a friend of mine did, research where they needed access to synchrotrons, and that's not a very common place. So in India, so I think it depends on what field you're looking to go into, and therefore what facilities are there for the particular field of interest.
Ziske, I'll just add a note there in terms of saying that the US PhD programs could also be a gateway into getting some sort of permanent residency within the US, because it's a well-structured program between academia and industry. So you basically get into academia, finish a PhD, then you apply for H-1B, a working visa to be in the US. So it's a well-oiled machine. So it's easy to work in the US companies straight after a master's or a PhD degree. So that's definitely a win for being in the US. So look at your long-term aims in terms of what do you want to do? Do you want to work in, say, the headquarters of a multinational company, many of which are based in the US? So I think that could help you. You could also look at research interests and see where that makes sense. And if you say that, for example, a lot of companies are based in Germany, they have research centers in Germany. If those are places you want to work in, if those are places which are doing cutting edge research, then you could actually orient your PhD applications in that way. So this is, again, one way to see the final outcomes in terms of what you do after a PhD, and then try to link it to where you want to be. Do you want to be in US? Do you want to be in Europe? Do you want to be in India? I think India is also doing very good research. There are some professors doing very good research. So I would say that don't focus too much on the country. Also focus more on the professors in terms of what are they up to, what is the type of research they are doing, and have conversations with them around what is the PhD outcomes and placements after the PhD program. So when you talk to professors and you get a sense of like, where do students end up, and imagine yourself in those shoes in terms of, do you want to end up in those places where the alumni from the PhD programs end up? And if you want to end up in those places, yes, you can go for those PhD programs. So it's a choice you got to make, and everybody has something different they look forward to. So it's your own choice.
Oh, excuse me.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Good evening, sir.
Hi, Zaid.
Hi, this is Ed. I'm doing my MTech from NIT Hamirpur in power systems. My question to you is, you have constantly mentioned that the professors are of utmost importance when we are researching about PhD. So my question is, what should be the points that I should consider while searching for professors? I mean, I know my focus area, but there is a lot of information out there on the internet. And is there any tool, or is there any, how I can like concentrate my research regarding the professors?
SK, do you want to jump in before I start?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I think this is a good question. I think this is pertinent, but it's also the central question for the whole process. Unfortunately, it's not rocket science. I mean, it's not a science. It's not a strict science. There is no one, formula that catches everything. But you want information on the professor that you want to, you would like to work for, and the easy information is what they actually do, which is also the most important information, right? So well, you can look up their list of publications. Sometimes professors have their own bio page, so they talk about their research interests and a little bit about their history. For example, they talk about where else they work, maybe what accomplishments, awards they have, what is their full list of publications, what are their other interests, and so on. So it's worth combing through the professor's bio page. It's worth combing through Google Scholar to look at their publications. See if what different areas of interest they have, how active they are, how successful their publications are. So are they heavily cited, this kind of stuff, because they are proxies, for example, for how well funded they might be. If they have a lot of high impact publications that are heavily cited, odds are they're successful, and so then you can use that as a proxy for their actual funding situation. At the end of the day, you don't have direct access to how much funding a professor has. Nobody's going to come and write out, hey, I have X million dollars in funding from DoD or Department of Defense or something like that. So you gather the indirect information in terms of how many high impact papers come out of the group, how big is the group. Usually the bigger the group, the more funding the professor has. That's another sort of indirect metric. And then it is worth trying to reach out to the group members who you can find either through the publications list or through the university website or the professor's website, and to try to reach out to them to ask more specific information pertaining to the professor or the group.
So folks, I'll add one quick point here. So when I applied for PhD programs, I got accepted twice into PhD programs. And the way I did it is that in every discipline, there is a list of top ranked journals. So there's a prestigious like A+ journals, A journals, B journals, and so on. So there are some places of publication which are considered more prestigious than the others. So what I would do is that before applying, I would pick up all the A+ journals and go through it in detail in terms of what are the trends in terms of research, who's publishing, what topics are they publishing. So that'll give you a very general sense of what's happening, what's considered prestigious in that space. It's a way for you to understand the broad spectrum in terms of research publications, universities, and so on. So once you have that broad idea in terms of topics and the professors working in that area, go to the professor web pages and drill down to each one of the papers which you think are interesting and try to find out who are the collaborating authors with the professor. So that's again a place where you'll get a lot of data in terms of who are the people working together. Read each paper in detail and try to look at some of the conclusions. What is the methodology? So does it even interest you? So ask yourself those sort of questions. And if that does interest you, list down a couple of those papers in terms of, okay, these are some papers you find interesting. Keep a running tracker in terms of each research paper. What do you think went well? What could be done better? And keep doing it continuously. So the more of this process you repeat with different professors, go through the web pages, drill down papers, list down like what exactly have they done, how they want to take it forward. I think you will begin to collect enough content. So by the time you write your statement of purpose, right, you have enough information about the research happening under each professor, whom they collaborate with, and how you can add value. So I feel that that's probably also one way for you to kind of distill this information and put everything together as one single package.
Thank you, Vinod. Thank you so much for your answer. That clears most of my doubt. Thank you.
Hello.
Right.
Hello.
Hello, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Hi, Kumar.
Hello.
Good evening, sir. This is Vishesh. Actually, I wanted to ask, I am in first year of MTech at IIT Delhi in production engineering. Right now in COVID times, we are doing online classes, and I do not have any research background yet, but I wanted to ask, how should I begin? I want to go into research in additive manufacturing in future. That is one discipline that appeals to me. What should I be doing right now? Some people say you should publish research papers in masters. So how should I go about that? What should be the first steps that I should be taking if I want to build a research career?
Shall I go first, Vinod?
Please.
First of all, I think this is a very good question because it shows that you have a problem statement that I think is sufficiently well defined. So you have a research interest and you're trying to build yourself up towards that. That's already a great start. Also, congratulations on choosing additive manufacturing because it is one of the emerging areas. So someone had earlier asked, what are the big areas for the next 20 to 30 years? Additive manufacturing, for example, is one of them. So you've also chosen, I would say, an area where there's lots of opportunity in the future. As far as building your interest goes, I think building your research portfolio, let's call it, is when you're in IIT Delhi, you first find out who's working on additive manufacturing in IIT Delhi, right? And you approach the professors within IIT Delhi to start working with them. Okay, that's the first step. If somebody is working on it in Delhi, as you said, the importance is in your master's. I don't know how long it's, 2 years or whatever it is. You have to build up some level of expertise. Okay, that is demonstrable, ideally in terms of publications with impact. But if that's not the case, you at least have, you have a thesis, you have conference papers, poster presentations, you have some collateral, as we say, that helps you to position yourself when you apply later for a PhD or what have you. And so you have to build up this collateral and you have to start identifying professors that are working in this area in IIT Delhi. Or if there's nobody working on it, you find a professor who's willing to, let's say, be your mentor because he has sufficient knowledge, of this kind of stuff, but he's not actually doing active work. But you can, you say, I will try to do some research myself and maybe you can be a guide. And then the second thing is when you have an opportunity for your summer internship or for your thesis research or something, you can, if there's nothing going on in IIT Delhi for additive manufacturing, I'm sure there is stuff going on in India. And so then you research either through the other institutes in India, whether it's ISC, IIT, what have you, or there is also private research that goes on. For example, General Electric has research operations in Bangalore. And there are quite a few others that have research centers in India right now. And so to identify those centers and start doing work, it's to basically build up that collateral, to start generating your content, whether it's posters, whether it's conference attendance, whether it's papers, and to first identify where you can go to start creating that.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for the insight.
So SK, I'll just add
my name is Yash God. I am from NIT Rourkela. Sir, I have recently joined master's program and I do not have a research background yet. I have joined a master's program in production engineering. So what I wish to know is for production engineering, for manufacturing, which countries and universities are I should approach for, and what kind of research topics I can approach, because I am, sir, very new. I have just joined the master, so I do not have that much knowledge. So if you can help.
You want to go because you also wanted to finish your thought on the last question.
Yeah. So quick couple of things, right? This also probably applies to you as you consider programs saying which country do you apply for. Firstly, US is a safe place to apply for because it's got a huge population, they've got a enormous investment in R&D, is among the highest in the world. So that really is one of the countries you should shoot for if you're interested in serious PhD programs. There are clearly, of course, places in Europe, but also remember that Europe by itself, like every country is a little different, they're much smaller. So you want to dig deeper in terms of research. So a couple of things you could do is that talk to your professors, have conversations with your professors, try to understand what is happening in this space, have those informal conversations. That's definitely going to help you. Do your own research in terms of, like I mentioned, right? Identify what the top journals are, go through the journals, identify broad trends, what are the research groups and professors working in certain areas, and go to their websites and understand what is it they do. So I think these are easy ways by which you can get broad trends in terms of what's happening. And I would say that there are students who already graduated from all these programs and who are on LinkedIn. So feel free to reach out to them and just send them a note saying, hey, maybe I have some questions around careers in this space. Can you help me, and so on. So do reach out. Not everybody in LinkedIn is going to respond. Maybe 1 in 10 is going to respond, but keep following it up. Send emails to people, network with people, and just be proactive. The more proactive you are, the more information you get over time. So give yourself some time. I think you're pretty new right now, but then start following these steps, and over time you'll gain a lot of domain specific knowledge.
Thank you, sir. I understood your points. Thanks a lot for help.
Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes,
I'm Shubham. I graduated recently with a dual degree from IIT Madras. I wish to pursue a PhD in machine learning data science. So I watched your recent video in which you compared pursuing a PhD in Europe versus pursuing it in the US. So you mentioned that the academic rigor is better in the US as compared to Europe. And you also mentioned that it's a bit difficult to find a job in the US because of the H-1B visa issue and all. So, I mean, how should I balance these 2 points? Should I prefer Europe because maybe it's easier to find a job or a permanent residency post a PhD?
Shubham, firstly, quick note. I think you have been very active on my channel. So firstly, thanks so much for just being out there, liking and sharing stuff. So Escape, again, I think you probably will know a lot more in this space, but let me add my quick couple of pointers in terms of where he could be thinking about. H-1B indeed is difficult to get in the US, but I still feel that at the end of the day, the US has a well-structured process by which you can be a student and get into academia, or if you want to get into industry. So there are lots and lots of jobs available. Just in terms of the sheer number of jobs, I don't think there's any country which beats the US in terms of just the volume and the number. So the professors in the US are also super well networked. They can also get you in touch with research laboratories or with research groups in industry. So I think that the network also helps you a lot in terms of finding jobs. So even though I did say that H-1B is a little difficult, end of the day, when it comes to companies, they have a quota for the number of PhD students they want to hire every year. So that is not really going to change year after year because they do need these folks to run research for their companies. So yes, it is difficult maybe for an MS program, but over time, I'm saying that still just by the sheer number and volume, I still believe that US is in a better spot than Europe. I think there are advantages in Europe too in terms of where you want to be. But I think end of the day, you have to make a call based on which professor you want to be working with, what is the research group you want to be working with, and what sort of placements happen after the end of the PhD program. So unless there are more details, right? Every university is going to have a different placement record. So unless you can drill down in terms of university and answer these questions, difficult to get deeper than this broad generalization in which I'm talking. SK, do you want to add something here?
Yeah, sorry, my mic was on mute. No, I think you hit the nail on its head, Vinod. So if you wanted to, let's call it hedge your risks, US is the headquarters. I would say as a single country that has a enormous opportunity for both employment and high-tech employment, which is kind of what machine learning data science will ultimately get you into. There is no single country that beats the United States. Okay, so Europe as a whole put together will have some amount of opportunity for data science or machine learning based employment, but Europe is a cluster of 20 plus countries. So within each country, there's only going to be a handful, and so I think from the standpoint of where do you go for high-tech employment that sort of allows you to have a lot of opportunities and let's say, like as Vinod mentioned, a straightforward process for ultimately being integrated into their into the country as a permanent resident or a citizen. The United States is certainly the most straightforward.
Okay, sure. Thank you, sir.
Hello, sir.
This question is from an undergraduate student perspective. So how to go about choosing whether we want to go for master's abroad or we can go for direct PhD abroad? Like talking in terms of permanent residency gateway, which Vinod sir talked about. And what are all the advantages of doing a PhD program? Because it's a long-term commitment, and I think I'm interested in research, but I don't know, like I'm not capable of deciding one of the options. So how should I go about it?
So Shrey, after this, we'll take Shipra's question. I think she was cut out when she was trying to ask the question. So Shrey, answering your question, right, in terms of applying for MS versus PhD, PhD is a high expectation. It's a very high bar because the idea is that you can hit the ground running and you already understand how to do research. So if you have very strong research credentials, you could definitely apply for a direct PhD program. In the US, I believe it's okay for undergraduates to apply for direct PhD programs. And again, the expectation is very high too. So you got to ask whether you're going to get into these programs. So there's a selectivity rate is again much higher for direct PhD programs compared to say an MS plus PhD program. Europe is different. On the other hand, I think most of the universities there require you to have an MS before you apply for a PhD program. So it's a little different between how you apply for PhD in US versus Europe. And end of the day, right? I mean, the professor is going to ask very basic questions like, do you know what it is to do research? Have you done enough coursework? Do you understand how to get work done in a lab? So if you can say yes to all these questions, then I think you stand a chance. At the end of the day, you're also part of a group. So you're part of like 30, 40 people applying to the professor. So again, the professor can also choose whom he or she wants to work with. So it's a little bit of like you get to choose a professor, the professor also gets to choose you. So that's the way the market works. SK, I'm going to stop here. Over to you.
Yeah, sorry. I think honestly the question is a bit strange for me. Like I don't necessarily, I wouldn't, at least from the vantage point of where I am today, I would not try to associate doing a master's or PhD with getting permanent residency. Like meaning, your permanent residency will take some amount of time, even if you do a PhD. Yeah, it's not the first thing that comes after you've done a PhD. The important thing to remember, as Vinod mentioned, and I think it's important to stress that is, you don't, maybe signing up to a PhD because you want permanent residency is not necessarily a good idea. I'm just going to be blunt. You want to sign up to a PhD because you are genuinely convinced you want to do research for 4 years or 5 years, whatever that is. And not because you want a permanent residency at the end of the road. Because I know lots of people that were in my program that did masters, and they continue to live in the US, and they all have permanent residency as well. The permanent residency will come after some length of time in the US. It can be expedited if you do have a PhD. If you just look at the average time it takes a PhD to get a permanent residency versus a master's, it's probably faster if you had a PhD. But the PhD is not a prerequisite for permanent residency, and it's not a guarantee for permanent residency. In other words, you still have to, there's criteria associated with with getting the permanent residency that involve what value you've added, let's say, to the US society, which goes beyond just a PhD. So I think it's important to sort of dissociate the two, even though to give a strictly one sentence answer, it would be you might get your permanent residency slightly faster if you did a PhD. I think it's a very bad reason to go into doing a PhD.
So there is one last question I wanted to ask from Vinod sir.
Yeah, sure. Hold on. I think there's one more person who was asking a question in between.
Okay.
Can I just finish that question and come back to you? There's a lady asking a question.
Yes, sir. Shipra.
Hi, Shipra. Please.
Hello, sir. Hope you are doing good.
Yes.
So, sir, I am an architecture and planning student. Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah, please. Yeah, go forward.
Yes. So, sir, I am an architecture and planning student. Right now, I am doing my Btec from IIT Roorkee in urban and rural planning. So, I am more inclined towards the sustainable architecture. So, I know it's maybe it's not under your scope, but if you have any knowledge related to this, because I am interested in further research in this subject. So, yes.
So Shipra, again, I think these are great questions, but I guess to give an answer, right? I mean, I think you have to do a lot of homework yourselves. I mean, we'll give you the broad guidance in terms of how to approach it, but like talk to your professors, right? Firstly, identify like what are some of the good journals, like I said before, in terms of like where the research gets published. And if you want to go for a PhD program, get into those journals, see what sort of topics are in high demand, where is the publications happening, talk to your professors in terms of what are future trends in that space you are in. And then once you identify these, then zone down in terms of professors who are working in this space and go to the individual websites, look at their publication history, what have they been doing? So what is the placement record when it comes to graduates from those programs? So you're looking at a multiple set of factors in terms of trying to understand what's happening in that space. And I think this applies to almost every space, whether in mechanical engineering, computer science, civil engineering, whatever it may be, right? I mean, this identify the professor, look at the graduate pool, see what they're working on, where they get placed after they finish the program, and then reach out to professors. I think these are some direct ways by which you can get into any PhD program. SK, please, over to you. If you have
yes, thank you, Vinod. So Shipra, I have just two broad axes of guidance for what you mentioned. Sustainable architecture is again an excellent area to go into for the next 20, even 30 years. I think it's part of the tackling the problem of climate change. And so it's going to certainly be an emerging area, and it is very active already, which leads me to my second axis of guidance, which is to say, you should definitely be looking at Europe or US, because the developed nations are further ahead in the research efforts on sustainability. Okay. Yes. So this is not something that maybe, I mean, it's not very active in India. So I would certainly look at I'm not an expert on sustainable architecture by any means, but I encourage you to look within Europe, because Europe is a little further ahead in terms of efforts for sustainability, and it takes at a governmental and European Union level, there's more efforts from Europe for sustainability than there is from the US. Even though just raw funding wise, maybe there's more in the US, I don't know. But I do think the Europe is a good, for example, to answer some of the questions. It's one of the areas where Europe is a good place.
Yes, sir. So there's one more question. Sir, right now I am in first year of my MTech. So is it a good idea to directly join PhD directly after my master's degree, or should I take some time to research more about the PhD?
I mean, take time for what purpose? I mean, I don't understand the purpose of taking time.
The question is it a good idea to directly do PhD after masters?
Yeah, I don't see why not. There's no reason to have a pause unless you wish to. So you can even go do a PhD directly after your bachelor's, which is what I did. So I mean, the pause is only if you need it for some reason. As long as you've built up your credentials in your master's to apply for a PhD, you should go ahead and apply for your PhD. Get your education out of the way, and then you can start contributing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I have one last question from
sir.
Vinod, sir.
Yes,
no problem.
Sir, I just a while back you just mentioned that you have a YouTube channel. Sir, is it about like people who want to do PhD abroad? Is it about informative about that? Can you just brief about it?
Yeah, sure. I have a channel called Win Career Talks. I'll send you a note on my comments. And again, I have a full-time job. I'm doing this as part of my hobby. So I feel that there needs to be more interaction between alumni and students when it comes to very basic career questions around what to do for MS program, an MBA program, for a PhD program. I think there's an information asymmetry which I'm trying to bridge. I'm also trying to get some speakers. I'm in the Bay Area, and it's easy for me to meet IIT alumni. So I'm also trying to bring some of them, get them to talk to students and answer questions. So it's more of a two-way exchange of ideas between alumni, students, helpful pointers in terms of admission process, careers, long-term prospects, not just for the PhD programs, but also for the MBA and the MS programs. That's the intent.
Okay, sir. Name of the YouTube channel?
Yeah, I'll send a note out here in my comment section.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Hey, I'm ahead of the game. It's Win Career Talks, and I just Googled it. Just Google his name. It's the first thing that shows up.
Win Career Talks. Okay, sir. Thank you.
And if not, use Google on his name. You're going to find it.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Hello, sir. My name is Akash Shah.
Hi, Akash.
I just joined NIT Rourkela MTech for like signal and image processing. And like you were saying that for applying for PhD, I have to like contact the professor and show something like I've done in like thesis work. But I've seen like in for applying for PhD, I have to give some like exams like GRE and others. So in MTech first year, we only have theory classes, mostly and lab classes, nothing like project work. So if I just do the thesis in second year, then I have to apply after that, or how can I apply like before that? In like before completing my master's, how can I apply for PhD?
So you have your, well, two things. One is there's no, unless there's something that forbids you, there's no reason you cannot do your, start working with a professor in your university in your first year. You can go approach them proactively and try to do it. On the other hand, if you have a full course load, I understand there's lack of time. One of the avenues will be your 3 months or whatever summer break, your 2.5 months. So people try to find opportunities to go somewhere and do research during that break and try to use that. The second thing is your third semester of your, if you have a 2-year program, your third semester is also something that is before you have to apply, meaning your applications will go, I don't know, depending on universities, somewhere between September and December. But you will have a little bit of time also in your last year, but your third semester, your first semester of your last year to really try to start building up something. So that's what you use along with your also if you're in a master's, if you have done some work in your bachelor's, you should certainly have at least I know when we were in IIT Madras, like I only did a bachelor's at IIT, and we already used to do that when we were in our last year of bachelor's at IITM. So if you have something from your bachelor's, great. If not, be proactive in your first year, use the summer break, and then use your third semester to build up as much collateral as possible. And that's if you want to go directly. If you don't have enough, then you'll have to wait and try to spend extra time doing research before you go for your PhD.
So SK, I'll add a quick note here in terms of I think you need to demonstrate solid research experience if you're applying to, for example, the top 20 programs in the US in the specific sector. So for example, if it's a mechanical engineering, you want to apply to the top 20 universities, top 50 universities, you need to be competing with lots and lots of students. You need to distinguish yourself, differentiate yourself. So that becomes a tough job. But if you want to, I mean, there are also a lot of other programs in the US. They have like thousands of universities. So you can always apply to other programs and also get in. So not every professor is looking for demonstrated research experience. Even if a little bit of exposure to research, if you've done some coursework, if you know what it is to get into research, you can still get into good universities. Like, I mean, I'm just pulling up names here, but the University of Tennessee, for example, it's not like the top 20, but then it is still a well-established university. So if you're targeting some other schools which are not top, you can still get in. So again, your application strategy will also depend on which university you're applying for. Is it top 10? Then you've got to really differentiate yourself. ASU is among the best when it comes to computer science. That's where SK went for graduate school. But then there are lots of universities, and then keep the list of universities, come up with a target in terms of how you want to approach these universities, and that will also help you in terms of do you need in-depth research or do you want some peripheral understanding to research? Could be ways of differentiating your application.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, folks, last question for me, and then I'll be signing off now, Vinod.
Yeah, please.
Hello, sir. This is Zara. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, Zara.
Yes, Zara.
Okay. Thank you. Sir, my name is Zara, and currently I'm enrolled in NIT Warangal as a first-year student for MTech. Prior to that, I have 2 years of work experience. So in future, I would like to go for MBA. So will this MTech degree will add value into my profile when I look from MBA standpoint? Or rather than doing MTech, should I have continued my work experience to so that I can land up in some good business school? Like in your interviews, in your introduction,
Yes.
sir, I heard that you also did the same. Like after MTech, you did an MBA. So I think you'll be in a good position to answer this. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll jump into this, but because you're short on time, is there any question regarding MS PhD which you want to shoot at SK before he signs off? And I'll come back to you, Zara. I'll answer your question.
Sure.
Sir,
Guys, we can't hear you, Zaid. It's
Hello.
not audible.
Hello.
Yes, Zaid.
Yeah, I just wanted to know your viewpoint on electric vehicles as a research area, because my current MTech thesis is on scheduling of EV charging stations, and I want to pursue further research in that. So, any any viewpoint that you have?
This is my viewpoint as a thumbs up.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So actually, I'm IIT Madras third year Btec. I want to go directly into PhD, from Btec to PhD. What type of profile would be like good to get into PhD?
When you say what type of profile, what does that mean? I don't understand.
I mean, like, what are the points which I can show that to get myself differentiated and to get into the program? Yeah.
Okay. Your
The
research
field, field is I'm thinking of machine learning. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so independent of the field, when you go from your bachelor's or your PhD, the credentials are more or less the same. It's good research credentials. So having a bunch of research in the area of interest, a good GPA always helps. Good statement of purpose, which is usually you write a letter explaining why you are interested in the particular university or the particular faculty. So a good statement of purpose and good recommendation letters, which is the more external and independent the person that's doing the recommendation, meaning it's not like your faculty that taught you a course versus it's someone, some in another country that reviewed your paper, which has more value than you going and asking your own professor. But so these are always the same, the same metrics that count for your PhD application.
Okay.
And of course, there's also a diversity aspect, but you won't. I mean, I don't know if you'll count, but whether you have what background you come from, socioeconomic background, gender, all of these. Universities also take those into consideration as part of their selection.
Okay. Actually, I have a PWD. I'm suffering from a low vision. Will that be any kind of obstacle, or will it be any kind of advantage in any way? Yeah.
You're suffering from what? Sorry.
Low vision. I have a low vision.
Poor vision.
Yeah.
I mean, is that like partial blindness?
Exactly. Yeah. I have around 45% blind. Yeah.
SK, you there? Okay, I'll try to answer that question. I think there's definitely weightage for diverse candidates, and yes, if you have other conditions which make you diverse. Sorry, SK. Now that you're here, please go forward.
Can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yeah, you broke up a little. Yeah.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I was just saying that the partial blindness is not a ticket of entry in itself. It could be, it could be included as part of the diversity and inclusion criteria of a university. At least I know in US, they look into that. But it's along with everything else that I mentioned, So I just mentioned diversity and inclusion is one more criteria that universities do take into account as part of their pool of hiring for the year. But nothing replaces a strong, strong research credentials, strong SOP, strong recommendation letters, and a strong GPA.
Yeah.
SK, what would you say is probably sorry, SK, one small question to you. What would you think is probably the most important factor when it comes to evaluating applications? You have been part of this, right? You have done your PhD, you've probably been part of that applications team and so on. So what's your sense in terms of what stands out if everything else being equal, right? Like what enables a great application to stand out?
I think that it's the research credentials that are actually for a PhD that are the strongest, because you see, if you think about if you take out the name PhD and you think about what you're going to do, you're going to do research for a professor somewhere for 4 years. What he wants to know is, you can already come in knowing how to do that for him, right? The easiest scenario for him is he doesn't have to train you on how to think and how to do work. So the more you have a body of work that shows, hey, I already know this, I'm just coming here to sort of help you. This is where, as Vinod mentioned, there's always the aspect of what's in it for the other person. And so what's in it for a professor or a university to bring you in? You already know what how to do this. You already know how to think and do research and publish papers. You're just going to fit in like a T in the program. And so the stronger that body of work is, the more I think that you stand out. That's the single most important thing.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Vinod.
Hi, sir. Hi,
SK,
sir.
thank you so much for
everyone.
having you here. I'll continue this conversation, but
Yeah,
thanks, SK.
and good luck to all of you with your programs. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, SK.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, folks. Sorry, folks. Let me answer some questions one by one. Again,
Sir, I have one doubt. Can I ask?
Yes, please. I go forward. After that, I'll try to answer some of the previous questions.
Okay.
Go forward.
Okay, sir. I am doing industrial engineering and management in NIT Calcutta, sir. If don't do research related to my branch, but to do in manufacturing, I should select, sir, in my college related to it. That is one question. And second was, is there any problem that doing MTech in industrial engineering and research in manufacturing? It is better, or there will be a sin that why you done research in manufacturing different to your branch. If I go for a PG admission in abroad, they ask you have chosen different branches. So what is the reason? Is that defect to me? And how much it cost, or how expensive to go to abroad for a PG program?
So, Sai, just you're asking a bunch of questions out here. So firstly, right, research methodology is just a process you need to follow. That is, you need to know how to do research. It doesn't matter which discipline it's in. So from my point of view, whether you're industrial, manufacturing, it's all a subset of mechanical engineering. That's my personal perspective. So if you have exposure in one space, it does prove that you have experience in a different space. One of the questions which people will ask you is, okay, now you've done it, say industrial engineering, why do you want to shift into manufacturing? So you'll face those sort of questions. So I would say that there are some universities like the University of Wisconsin-Madison has a PhD program, I believe, just in manufacturing engineering. So to get into these programs, right, they need you to do a minimum coursework, some compulsory courses in certain spaces, and you have to make sure that you know those things before you apply for a PhD program. So look at the coursework, what's expected during for a PhD student to enter into, say, universities with a PhD in manufacturing engineering, compare with what you have right now. If there's a gap, try to bridge the gap by taking courses on Coursera. There are a bunch of websites which offer additional courses. So try to take some courses, and then I think you have a better chance of getting admitted into a different PhD program. By the way, these are applications that are not very common. So again, it's not often that you have people trying to change disciplines. So definitely you are against a tide, and there not be too many people like you in the same boat. But you can always make a case for yourself in terms of saying that you're done enough courses, your understanding of research. Like I said, research is pretty much interchangeable. So if you've done very good research, you can always use as a way to say that you can continue to do research and you can pick up new skills. So if you position it from a learning point of view, saying that you're willing to learn and adapt, I think you will stand a very good chance. Your second point is around funding. So I would say that most PhD programs in US are fully funded. So which basically means that you can take care of your living expenses. The only additional expenses will be your travel fare from India to US and your application expenses, which is around $1,000 to $1,500 for maybe 10 to 15 universities. So each university is around $100. So that's something you need to factor for. And also when you end up in the US, I think the first month, you have to wait till the end of the month to get paid. So you'll need to have enough finances to push you through the first 1 month, which is probably around, again, depending on the university, it could range from $1,200, $1,500 to it could range up to $3,000 if you're in Berkeley or Stanford, which is a big city. So again, based on cost of living, your living expenses can vary. So these are some of the additional expenses you keep in mind. Europe is very different. The living expenses are much cheaper. And if you get into a PhD program, you could also get some additional stipends. So I don't think you'll be spending anything from your pocket if you're in Europe. But again, the same thing, you need to book a flight, go there, your visa expenses, your application expenses, these will be out-of-pocket expenses.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Folks, I'm going to answer some questions which were raised
was-
earlier. Folks, just hold on, please. So I think there are a couple of questions which I'll just try to like finish up one by one. I couldn't answer each one of them. So there was one question around vision, right? In terms of like, does it figure into the diversity? I think yes. I think a lot of universities do figure diversity into the PhD programs. So if everything else being equal, if you got solid grade point average, if you got solid credentials, SOP, recommendation letters, and so on, yes, then if you're diverse, you will stand on the chance of getting into the PhD program. So that definitely is a positive when it comes to applying for PhD programs. There's another question in terms of what is the scope for electric vehicles and so on. And this again relates to a question which is asked in the beginning of the call about what are the areas which are going to become prominent in the next 20 to 30 years. So nobody has a crystal ball where they can see 100% clearly as to what's going to happen for the future, but just look at the existing trends and you can yourself predict what's going to happen. So what's happening right now is a lot of computing capacity is becoming available to everybody. Laymen, citizens all have a lot of computing capacity. So there was a science museum in the Silicon Valley I went to recently, which was saying that for example, the supercomputers of 1970s and 1980s were in the hands of people by the 2000s. So the processing capacity is moving up dramatically. So this basically means that even the supercomputers of today will be in the hands of people in another 20 to 30 years. So imagine what is the work being done with very advanced computing skills. It could be genome splitting. It could be a lot of like analysis. So as more and more computation skills develop, a lot of things are going to happen together in terms of AI ML is going to be applied to a lot of disciplines. So you will see the applications of machine learning into manufacturing engineering. You could see, for example, virtual reality becoming a part of the manufacturing process. So I think there's a lot of scope in terms of how things are headed for the future. And for example, electric vehicles, the way vehicles are going to be totally automated, how they're going to, like in India, automated vehicles are coming into the picture. Electric vehicles are coming into the picture through Ola and so on. So definitely there's a lot of churn happening in different spaces. There's a lot of complexity emerging with respect to computation and how it's going to change our ways of living. So again, these are areas these are broad trends. And based on that, a lot of things would change. Computer science would change. Mechanical engineering will be more like computer science in the future. I think manufacturing will also be more like computer science in the future. So again, this is a broad idea of where things are headed, but in terms of exact details, I mean, you have to do your own research. There was, I think, there was a person who asked a question on MTech after a PhD. Can you just repeat that question, please? I think it's a lady who asked me that question. I couldn't answer that question. I said I'll get back to later, but can you repeat the question? I'll answer that question now.
Sure, sir. So my question here was like, I want to pursue MBA after MTech.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so let me put it this way. So I know a couple of people who have done their MBA after the MTech, and that really helps in a way that if you want to get into very specific niche areas, right? There are a lot of research focused companies which are looking to hire people who also have an MBA degree. I think in those places, it does help to have an MBA degree. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. You have my name, connect me on LinkedIn. I'll get you in touch with some folks who already have an MBA degree and who also who have an MTech degree from IIT Bombay, who ended up doing an MBA degree and so on. So I'll get you in touch with some of those folks. But it's not a waste, let me put it this way. So ideally, most people in India do not do an MTech before doing an MBA. But the advantage of doing an MTech and an MBA is that you get a solid understanding of being in a specific scientific discipline, being in a certain research area and being an expert in that space, and also trying to, through an MBA degree, get skills in things like sales and marketing, get skills in operations, finance, and so on. So there are very, very few people who have both technical domain expertise and also have an understanding of how businesses work. So if you want to differentiate yourself, yes, this is a great place to do it by doing an MTech and an MBA. but it's not required typically in industry. And again, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'll feel free to connect you with some of the folks I know, and probably they can also give you some insights in terms of what it means to do an MBA after an MTech.
Sure. So, actually, here my worry was for good business schools, they generally require minimum 3 years of experience. And currently, I do have for 2 years only, and 2 years plus MTech degree. So, will it compensate for 3 years of work experience in my profile when I go for MBA?
Are you talking about MBA in the US and abroad, or is it MBA in the Indian scenario?
Sir, abroad.
No, I say that when it comes to working abroad, please try to have 4 to 5 years of work experience. This is just my personal thought. The more work experience you have, the more polished you will be, and it'll be easier for you to find a job. People who jump to a MBA without enough work experience really struggle like crazy to find jobs. And many of them have to come back to Asia and so on. So I think it's ideal for you to work for a couple of years. I know you probably have a very good academic degree, but keep it separate. Try to get work experience, because the working world is different from an academic world. So I would say that get 4 to 5 years of work experience, at least 4. Do not jump for an MBA program without having 4 years of solid work experience, because it only hurt you when it comes to actual placements.
Sure. Sounds good. Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Sir,
folks, over to questions. Yeah.
Yes, sir. There was, you just mentioned about a PhD program in manufacturing. Can you, sir, give some details? You just mentioned about a Madison University or a place in Germany. Can you, sir, give me some details about that program?
Hey, I'm not from the manufacturing engineering discipline, but I have friends who did I think a master's in manufacturing engineering. So I'll type the name of the university. So please do your own research. I mean, go to the website of these universities, and they have ways by which you can filter in by programs. So under PhD, you will see all these programs listed. So go to the PhD program in the University of Wisconsin-Madison, search for places, what sort of coursework do they want, what are the entry requirements. So all these are listed very clearly on the website. So this is pretty easy information to get. And I think there's a bunch of other manufacturing programs, but I'll have to do a little bit of research. So send me a note on either LinkedIn, or send me a note on there's a PhD abroad, right? There is a Telegram channel. So send me a note there. I'll get back with a list of universities and maybe some links you can follow up on for rankings of manufacturing programs.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
So by the way, folks, the video for this session will be posted in 2 places. So one is that Ansari runs a very good channel called Careerly Mates, a fantastic way for you to, again, interact with other PhD students. So it'll be posted on that YouTube channel. And I'll also post it on my personal YouTube channel, which is Win Career Talks. So again, you will find that in different places, the recording of this video.
Hello, sir.
Yes. Hi, Shubham.
Yeah.
Yep.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah, so I am doing my master's in IIT Patna now on communication system engineering. So I want to go for PhD abroad, but my question is, if I want to apply for September 2020, so by which time I have to complete all my profile, I mean all my application procedure, by which time I have to complete?
Right. So if you're going to be applying for the next year, for example, right? I mean, if you want to enter university in, say, August of 2022, by this December, you need to finish your application. So that is a deadline.
Okay.
So it's almost 8 months in advance of when you want to join, you have to finish your application process. Universities also offer not just a fall entry, but they will also offer, I think it's spring entry at like 6 months away from the fall entry. They may also have an additional intake, but that's very small in number. So again, you'll have to check with each university in terms of when do they allow students within the US. And I don't have exact details for European universities.
Okay. And sir, actually I'm asking this question because I am working on my thesis, but I doubt I can finish it by December or so, because actually it is taking a lot of time. So is it mandatory to publish a paper, or if I can write my SOP in a good, good research proposal, if I can write, will it be sufficient, or I have to publish a paper? Because I doubt I can't publish by that time.
Absolutely, Shubham. So again, it depends on which university you target. For example, if you're looking at the US, you want to target a top 5 university, you have to have a research publication at least, or top 10 university, you need to have research publications. But there are a lot of other universities you can target. So I would say that if you're targeting something from the, say, the 50th rank to the 100th rank, these are all top notch. I mean, they're still, in terms of university ranking, they're still better than some of the IITs. So I would say that you can have a strategy for which colleges you apply to, and not everyone is looking for demonstrated research, because they know that as an undergrad and master student, not everyone has access to do hardcore research. So I would say that do your homework in terms of, like I said, going to professor websites, identifying research they do, and saying how you can add value. So these are things you can do independently of whether you have external research experience or not. On top of it, if you have demonstrated internship experience or research experience or publication, that could help, but it's not mandatory for universities outside the top 20.
Yeah, and if I can assure them that by this time I can publish a paper, will they give me enough time to do that, or by the time of application I have to complete my profile?
I mean, the way it works is that they would expect you to, okay, there are two ways of looking at it, right? One is that when are you going to finish your degree? So for example, in most programs, the expectation is that you finish your degree by May of that year.
Yeah.
And you apply the December. So for example, you apply this December to universities, you finish your program by May, and you join the university by August. So this is the timeline they're looking at. And universities don't care too much about like what exact publication records you have, but all they want to know is that have you been through the process of publishing, which basically means that you send your paper, you get back a lot of comments, and you're asked to revise your paper, then you revise, send it back again, then you get more comments. So that entire process could take multiple years for top-notch journals. So as long as you can say that you understand the process and you know how it works, I think that's more important than actual publishing of papers.
Yeah. And the second question is basically for the US university, GRE exam is mandatory, or IELTS is sufficient for that?
I think ideally you would need to have a GRE exam for sure. And IELTS is typically for, I think it's like, let's look at this English language proficiency. So you can either do English language proficiency through the TOEFL exam or the IELTS exam. So IELTS are required more for Canada and Europe, and is a measure of your English proficiency. But in terms of your actual quantitative skills, I think the GRE measures that, and that's required only for the US universities, not for European universities. Even though I think a couple of universities like Oxford and Cambridge do ask for GRE scores, but it's optional. But US universities absolutely need GRE scores.
Yeah. Okay. So okay, that is the question. And another thing is I am working on this 5G thing, 5G, 6G, and beyond things.
Mm-hmm.
So can you suggest me some good university? I mean, in which area in Europe or US? What is the most advanced countries who are doing work in these things?
Again, Shubham, I'm not an expert in this space, but I worked in Cisco, which is actually one of the world leaders when it comes to 5G technology. So I would say that companies like Qualcomm, Cisco, and IBM, they're investing a lot into 5G. So these are industries. But in terms of companies, I would also say the other companies like Samsung Electronics who also invest. I think they're probably the biggest investors in R&D compared to a lot of big tech companies. It's probably the number one in the world. So I would say South Korea could also be one of the places you look for in terms of research universities where there's a lot of research happening in that sector. So again, just keep in mind that South Korean universities are also doing great work if you want to look at that as an option.
Yeah. And what about this US and Europe?
Yeah, again, you have to do your own research, Shubham. I can't recall that at the top of my mind, but I would say that typically, right, if you're looking at IBM or if you look at Qualcomm, they are kind of based in the East Coast, or like IBM is based in New Jersey, and Qualcomm is based in San Diego. So if you're looking at University of California, San Diego, I think they'll definitely do a lot of research in this space. Likewise, if you're looking at universities like Rensselaer Polytechnic or Princeton University or New Jersey, sorry?
this Polytechnic, Rensselaer of Polytechnic, that is in France, right?
No, there is RPI. Just type this in Google.
Okay,
It's
okay.
in New York. RPI.
Okay, okay. Yeah.
So these places, right? I mean, they're very close to these big industries. So they will also be doing a lot of intense research. So you could look at these places as, again, places you want to get in. So find out the location of the big companies and check what are the universities nearby to those companies. And I'm sure there's going to be some research collaboration. So those could be some proxies for you to find places to apply.
Yeah.
And Shubham, continue. If you have more questions, right, there's a Telegram group on which Ansari has posted on the comment section. So feel free to post comments and we'll keep this conversation alive.
Yeah, definitely, sir. And can I join you in LinkedIn also?
Absolutely. I'm free to answer students. So add me on LinkedIn. Follow Ansari's YouTube channel, the PhD Abroad Telegram, and also follow my YouTube channel, which is Win Career Talks.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, sir.
Yes. Okay, folks, let me go to the comment section. I think there's some lists out here. I'm trying to check if I answered the questions. So there's a question from Sai around mechanical engineering, internships. Have I answered a question, Sai? I think you also asked this questions face to face. Is your question answered? Sai Kiran, are you there?
So good evening, sir. Shall
Hi,
I?
Shazad.
Yes, sir. Shall I ask my questions, sir?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Sir, I am currently a first year student, MS Metallurgy in IIT Madras, sir.
Okay.
So I have chosen ICME as my research area, sir. What should be my next 2 to 2.5 years to get a PhD in top universities, and which countries would be best, sir?
So I would say do a couple of things. I mean, make sure that you have a solid understanding of your coursework. Pick up a lot of computational skills because I think ICME involves a lot of computation. Is it correct?
Yes, sir. Integrated computational materials.
Yeah, exactly. So do a lot of coursework, have a good GPA, work with professors one-on-one as much as possible. Try to get a good recommendation letter from them. Apply for internships in the research areas where you feel that you can make an impact. Try to work with professors who can also give you a good recommendation letter later. And I think, yeah, you just build up your research profile, read up about other universities, professors, what sort of research they work on, and reach out to them a year in advance of your application process. Get all your GRE, TOEFL written, knock it away 1 year before you apply for programs, and then begin to reach out to professors. And I'm sure some of them will respond. Not everyone will respond, but some of them will respond. And that's typically how you get into research programs.
Which countries would be best for this area? So
typically material science, right? I think there's a lot of research happening in German universities. For example, I think, for example, Technical University of Munich, there's a lot of research happening. There is a lot of research happening in Cambridge, which is, again, I think very good for engineering, even better than Oxford. EPFL in France is a great place to be in. I think there is some solid research. I mean, these are all solid engineering schools. It's a good places to target. In the US, there's a bunch of schools like, I'm not even getting into the top schools like MIT, Berkeley, Stanford, Cornell. I'm not even going there. But outside that, there are also places like Pennsylvania State University, Arizona State University. There's University of Minnesota. So I think these are places you could target. Into Ohio State University. These are all places which are doing good research in engineering, especially in material science. So these are places to target. But again, these are all broad generalizations, right? When I say material science, it includes so many research areas. So when you say, for example, ICME, you have to do your own research. See, where are the professors located? They could be located, say, in the University of Alabama. They could be located in, say, a place like Peking University in China, or they could be South Korea. So you really have to identify like the top researchers, and that's your homework as you apply.
Yes, sir. Another point you were saying that you should have a good amount of research experience. Will this MS research experience will be good enough, right, sir, for our profile?
Yeah, it's good. I think it's good experience, but don't make it just a coursework based degree. So if you just do a lot of courses and you say that's research experience, that's not correct.
No, sir. Actually, we have our own research projects.
So do good research. What I'm trying to say is that when you do your research, pick up a difficult topic. Even if you don't hit it 100%, if you're making an honest attempt to learn, know something through it, work very closely with the professor. The professor works collaboratively with you. there's a lot of learning which happens, right? So you want to be in a place where there's learning. I think that's the intent behind doing a research project. Don't try to take super simple projects so that you can get it done very easily and get it done fast, because if you've done something too quickly, that means that you're going to learn nothing from it in the process. So pick up the right topics, work closely with professors. They'll also give you a lot of tips in terms of how you need to be thinking differently, the mistakes you make, and that's part of research. So the more in-depth and hardcore research topics you pick up, the better you're going to be suited for research careers.
Yes, sir. Thanks, sir.
And even professors, when they look at the topics, right, the moment they see it, they know how difficult or easy it is. If you just pick up easy projects to work on, they'll be like, this person has no idea of research. But if you picked up a very difficult topic, even if there's been a failure, right, still the fact that you picked up a difficult topic, you worked on it, you're able to make some progress will mean a lot about what you did. And typically before a PhD offer, I think a professor will also end up talking to students one-to-one and have that conversation. This is like an interview where they'll ask you some questions. So these are questions they'll ask you. So what did you learn during a PhD program? What skills did you develop? And if you can answer it really well, then you can get into these programs.
Sir, understood. Thank you, sir.
Okay, there's one question from Shweta. Let me try to answer. So she's planning to do a PhD in the UK. She wants to see how to proceed and what are the career opportunities after completing a PhD. So for applying to UK, it's a pretty straightforward process. I think you just need to give your IELTS, and then it's a bunch of straightforward steps. You collect a statement of purpose, you send letters of recommendation to your professors, and they fill it up. And you have your transcripts ready with you. So that's the actual mechanics of the application process. So these are straightforward. You can go to any website, look at it, and you will get a lot of information. So all this can be done within a couple of months. I would say maybe 2 months. In terms of career opportunities after finishing a PhD, you can work both in industry or in academia. So again, that's where you have to look at the placement records of that university. So talk to the students out there, somebody who's doing a PhD or postdoc. Try to talk to them on LinkedIn or email them, ask them questions, but also show them that you're interested. Like if you're just a stranger asking questions, nobody's going to respond. But ask them, where do people typically end up? And I think these are easy ways for you to understand what's happening. This information is also given on websites in some UK-based universities. So you can look at the career outcomes and then decide, do you find people ending up in industry? And if you don't like it, if you want to be in academia, maybe that place is not for you. So that's kind of how you make some choices.
Good evening, sir. I have one question. So,
hi, Raj. Hi, Dinesh.
Yeah. So I'm currently working with the armed forces, and I've been sponsored to do MTech in aerospace engineering with specialization in UAV. So, what I would like to know if it's possible, during the course, I would like to do a project, internship, right? I thought I should do the project with some international companies. So, or if not the international companies, at least international universities on some good idea. So, how do you think I should go about it, sir? Because this is little offbeat from the topic, but I just thought I should ask.
Dinesh, sorry, your voice is cutting out. So you said did you say you're working in the armed forces and you want to go for a master's in engineering, and you want to know how to do a good internship in a MNC? Is that what you asked?
Yeah. So I am in the armed forces, and I've been sponsored to do masters in technology in UAV, aerospace engineering. So I would like to know, how would I go about it? Like, there is an internship, right? I want to do the internship abroad, like in a proper university or in a proper, in one of the top companies.
Yeah.
So how would I build a profile? And, I'm starting to interact with these organizations and the professors. But so what should be the roadmap?
Yeah, sure. So Dinesh, a couple of things, right? If you want to work in industries abroad, it's difficult if you're not a student. So there's a separate category of visa just made for students that enables you to enter the US. So that's not available for people who are working right now and are not a student. So again, first point is that you have to be in a university or college.
I'm also a student.
Okay, you're a student. So that makes it easier, firstly. In terms of industries, right, typically a lot of the industries look for people from within the US from the undergrad programs to fill up the internship roles. So I would say that it's difficult to get into internships straight for for the industries. In terms of, if you say want to work in IBM research, you apply directly to their US office. It's very difficult to get in because there are a lot of hassles, visa hassles and so on. So I would say that it's going to be extremely difficult unless you have an inside contact or someone who can, your friend, relatives who can say that, okay, we will help you out with the actual visa process and help you get in. So it's not very common. I think it's a little easier if you're in computer science because, again, industries do sometimes get people in to work. Not US is very difficult, but I still believe that there are some European internships which are available in companies like Google and so on, Google and Microsoft. So I think they still do some hiring for internships, but this is mainly for computer science, not for non-computer science students. The second part of the question is in terms of academic internships you can get. So I would say the way you can look at academic internships is that when you're studying as a student, like, you need to be preferably from a more well-known university. So if you're from the NITs or IITs, you definitely stand a better chance of getting selected for the internships. So the idea is that you reach out to professors like very early on and strike up a conversation with them. So it's like, for example, if they've done some great research, go to their website, look at the research they published, give them comments in terms of like what you think about the research. Is it going in the right direction? Do you want to propose some new ideas and so on? So strike a rapport with them, and like once you feel that you're having a certain relationship built with the professor, you could write to them a little later saying, yeah, you're interested in doing some sort of summer internship with them. And the professor is not going to define what you have to be doing. You have to be clear in terms of how you're going to add value. And if there's definitely some match, and if the professor feels that you can add value, they may call you for a academic internship in the US. So that's the way you can make the connect, and that's the way you can end up in the US. It's difficult. You have to do a lot of homework in advance. But if it works, yes, there is still a very good possibility, whether you're undergrad or master students, that you could go to a place in Europe, or you could actually end up in the US to do an internship. So it's definitely a possibility, but the hard work is up to you. Does it answer your question, Dinesh, or do you have any other follow-up questions?
I'm good. I'll connect with you.
Sure.
Sir, sorry to interrupt. Sir, shall I message you on LinkedIn so that can you connect with some of the people whom you know who are working in ICM area, sir?
Yeah, sure. I mean, why don't you also post in the Telegram app? Yeah, sure. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, but also post on Telegram. And let's see, there could be some people in that PhD abroad channel who already are working in this space. So I think it's a wider community. There are 2,500 people on the Telegram app. So I think do network there. We can also find people.
Sure, sir. Thanks.
There's a question from Utkarsh around what are the areas to focus on renewable energy. I think that question was answered. Is international? There's a question from Akash in terms of, is international journal publication mandatory for PhD abroad? Again, like I said, it's only mandatory if you're applying the top 10, top 20 schools. Applying to the outside the top 20 schools in the US, or if you're applying to the outside the top 10 universities in Europe, I don't think you need to have publications. But you need to demonstrate your research credentials. That's very important. What would you suggest for masters in automotive engineering? That's a question from Srihari. So Srihari, I would say that reach out to me separately. I mean, reach out on LinkedIn or a Telegram. I'll send you some links to universities which are good in automotive engineering. I can't recall that right now, but I would expect many universities in Germany to be very good in automotive, because that's a place that the entire the companies like Mercedes-Benz are headquartered out of Germany. So again, German universities are definitely an easy match, but I could do more research and get back on this question. There's a question whether universities distinguish between IITs, NITs, and other institutions. Not really. I would say that it's more important, more than university brand, right? It's all about what does the student bring to the table. I think that's more important. So you could belong to IITs and end up having no exposure to research, and they may kick you out of PhD programs because you're not good enough. So IIT brand name cannot help you in terms of getting admission if you have a bad credential in terms of research. You build up your own research interests. And for example, if you are from a tier 3 engineering college saying that you're good research credentials and you are from IIT Madras with good letters of recommendations, and then you demonstrate solid research credentials, everything else being equal, yes, then brand name matters. But typically students are not equal. Everybody is different. In IITs, what happens is that you have exposure to professors who have done good research in the past. So if you've worked with those professors, yes, you have an advantage. But again, you have to do the homework and do work with the professors. Up to you to build up your research credentials. So it's more about the professors you work with, which determines the outcome rather than the brand name in terms of where you are. You could be from, say, a private engineering college, but then you could have worked with professors in Indian Institute of Science or ISRO, and you could have gotten great recommendation letters. And you are as good as a student of the IITs for sure. So it's all based on the hard work you do in terms of building up your own career and your research credentials. There's a question from Saranya in terms of do gaps during education make an impact? Not really, it doesn't really make an impact, but definitely there could be questions if you're taking a long break, more than a year. If you have spent 3 years doing something, people are going to ask question, what did you do? Like, did you learn anything? If you've been in industry and then want to come back, like what makes you want to come back? What did you learn in industry? So industrial experience could be an advantage when crafting your statement of purpose if you spin it the right way, saying that you learned a lot of skills around hard work, teamwork, and so on. So those are important. But again, you have to make a case for yourself. And if you want to be in a place where you have done some random work as an engineer in the workplace, and then you want to do some different research work during your PhD program, then you have to make the connect, saying that even though you did not gain technical skills during your work experience, you gained a lot of people management skills. You know how to work under tight guidelines. You know how to work on projects. So if you can make a good case for yourself, work experience can be a big help. Gaps as such don't matter. A couple of years don't matter, but you have to say what you bring to the table. That's most important. And she also asked a question in terms of is PhD after BTech, is it possible? Absolutely, it's possible. But again, you're going to be competing with people who also have a master's degree. So you just need to prove that you're as good as anyone else. So Papai Bishwas, a student of IIT Kharagpur, asks a question. He's a first-year student. Should I prepare now for PhD in US or Germany? So Papai, I'm not sure if you're there, but are you in undergrad or the master's program? Okay, I don't think he's there. So I would say that the thing you can do in the first year, if you're in either undergrad or master's program, is that try to get your GRE and TOEFL done by the third year of your undergrad program or the first year of your master's program, because you want to get that out of the way as fast as possible. So begin preparation for exams like GRE, TOEFL, get it done as fast as possible, and it'll leave you a lot of mind space which free so that you can work on other problems later. So begin to do things like reading a word list, building up your vocabulary right from day one of your first year. I think that's going to help a lot. Shweta has a question in terms of doing a PhD in UK. Again, feel free to message me on LinkedIn or on Telegram. We'll continue this conversation. Ajit asked a question in terms of how can we prove that we have a good research ability. So if you have demonstrated experience of research, if you can ask the right questions, if you've already gone through the professor websites and identified gaps where people could do a better job, and also say how you can add value to the research, I think that's how you demonstrate that you understand research. Do interviews take place where you could interact with professors beforehand? Typically, again, in many universities, before an actual PhD offer, professors might call students and talk to them if they have questions around the research credentials. But if they're very convinced, they may not even talk to you directly. So again, it all depends on how strong your application is. That will decide the interviews, if it happens or not. How much of work experience is required for a PhD after doing an MTech from IIT? There is no expectation of work experience. So you should apply for a PhD straight after your undergrad program. I would say that if you apply and if you're not getting selected, it's probably because you applied very high in terms of the top universities. So spread your applications, apply to universities in the top 50 to 100, 100 to 200, and so on. There's so many universities in the US, and there are a lot of great universities in Europe. So if you keep applying to many universities, you'll ultimately get in somewhere. You don't need a work experience. If your mind is on a PhD, try to get it done as fast as possible. You don't need to work. Best universities for PhD in mining engineering. Again, I had to get back on this. So send a note on either Telegram or LinkedIn, and I'll get back with the list of universities which are top in this space. Research on developing high entropy alloys. Please give some insights. Okay, so please go to Google Scholar, type high entropy alloys, filter down by research happening in the last, say, 1 year, 1 or 2 years. You will find a list of professors working in the space and what research they've done. So you'll also find a summary of the work which has been done. So please do your homework, go to Google Scholar, list down all the top 20 professors in the space, also list down what research work they're doing, and that'll give you a very good sense of what's happening. Also try to download the papers and read that yourself and understand like what's happening in the sector, where can you add value? And I think these are easy ways by which you can understand what's happening in that space. I think it's Abhishek who asked a question in terms of best universities for PhD in mining. Yeah, and I'll get back on this question, Abhishek. Feel free to message me on LinkedIn or on Telegram. Oh, that's a lot of questions. Folks, we'll continue these conversations. I'm not saying this is the only conversation. I'll continue to bring other speakers into conversations. I have another friend who also promised to have a conversation. So I'll probably line up something within the next 1 week or the next 2 weeks. So we will keep in touch, keep the questions coming. And hopefully we are trying to add value and help students in terms of answering the regular questions. So thanks for being here. Any last minute thoughts, questions, or things we could do better? Ansari, thank you so much for arranging this session. Folks, like the Careerly YouTube channel. I think Ansari posts a lot of material on his YouTube channel. Look at that. I'll also post material on my YouTube channel at Win Career Talks. And keep the discussions happening on Telegram. We are all there to help you as much as possible. Again, we all want to give back in some way to the Indian student ecosystem. So feel free to connect with us anytime. We are always there to help students. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.